The aliens had been watching Earth for a long time. From their view high above in the cold darkness of space, our world looked small, fragile, and weak. To them, humans were just another species clinging to a planet full of oceans, forests, deserts, and mountains. The reports they gathered painted a picture that made Earth seem easy to conquer. They noted that humans argued among themselves. Nations disagreed, leaders fought for power, and people often struggled just to survive. They saw wars on Earth where humans fought each other, wasting energy and resources. They saw humans depending too much on fragile machines, tiny satellites, circling the planet, networks that could be broken with a single strike, weapons that still used gunpowder and explosives. Compared to the alien fleets with their shining ships and energy cannons, humanity looked almost laughable. So, in their councils, the aliens spoke with arrogance. They told themselves Earth would fall in days, perhaps even hours. One commander said it would be like crushing an insect beneath their feet. Another laughed and claimed they would not even need their full force, only a handful of ships to show their power. In their pride, they forgot that appearances can deceive. From their distance, they did not see the small things that made humans dangerous. They did not notice how humans could adapt to sudden problems. They ignored the strange way. Humans always found unity when facing a common threat. They did not understand the human heart, which burned stronger when under pressure. Instead, they only looked at numbers, at weapons, at machines, and they believed they understood everything. It was not the first time the aliens had thought this way. Across the galaxy, they had fought and conquered many worlds. Each time, their advanced ships had cut through enemy defenses. Their enemies often surrendered quickly, overwhelmed by fear and the hopelessness of resistance. To the aliens, war had become routine. They believed no one could surprise them anymore. But Earth was not like the other worlds they had crushed. When the invasion plan was drawn, the aliens did not send their largest fleet. They wanted to keep their main forces for what they thought would be more serious threats. For Earth, they assigned only a fraction of their ships, believing it would be enough. Scouts were sent to orbit quietly around the planet, mapping military bases, tracking communication systems, and measuring the strength of Earth's armies. Every report confirmed. Their pride, humanity looked weak, divided, and outdated. The first signs of arrogance showed in their preparations. Instead of studying human history deeply, they only skimmed through records. They saw wars but misunderstood their meaning. To the aliens, human wars showed foolishness and destruction. But they failed to see the lesson inside, that humans always found ways to rise after being broken, to rebuild stronger than before. To the aliens, humans wasting their energy on conflict meant they were careless. But to those who understood better, it showed how humans had been sharpening themselves like a blade, learning to fight again and again across centuries. The aliens also misunderstood human emotions. They saw fear as weakness. They believed that once humans saw their ships in the sky, panic would spread and people would surrender. What they did not realize was that human fear often turned into courage. In moments of great danger, humans could surprise even themselves. Fear gave birth to determination, and desperation brought out hidden strength. But the aliens had no experience with this. They came from a culture where fear meant submission, and so they expected humans to behave the same way. When the first alien fleet prepared to leave their homeworld for Earth, they did so with songs of victory already playing in their minds. Their soldiers laughed in their barracks, saying it would be an easy mission. Their leaders discussed how they would divide Earth's resources before even arriving. To them, it was not a question of if they would win, but only how quickly. Their overconfidence was so great that they did not even consider the possibility of failure. Back on Earth, life continued as normal. People went to work, Children played and families sat together at dinner, unaware that eyes from far away were fixed upon them. Humanity had no idea that soon, strangers from the stars would test everything they had built. But if the aliens had listened closely, they would have heard something in the heartbeat of humanity, something quiet, something strong, something they were blind to. As the alien fleet finally approached Earth, their commanders prepared speeches of conquest. They planned to demand surrender from world leaders. They planned to show their weapons in the sky, expecting humanity to kneel in fear. But even in these final moments before contact, their pride blinded them. They ignored the possibility that humans might not react the way they imagined. They thought Earth was just another world to add to their empire. But Earth had its own story. For thousands of years, humans had faced disasters, storms, plagues, wars, hunger, and survived them all. Every time the world pushed them to the edge, they fought back. They carried scars, but those scars made them stronger. Humanity was not perfect, but perfection was never their strength. Their strength was their ability to endure, to adapt, to refuse defeat. The aliens did not see this. To them, humans were weak creatures of flesh and bone. They did not see the spirit burning inside. And that blindness would cost them dearly. When their ships broke through the darkness and entered Earth's skies, the aliens thought they were beginning a simple conquest. In truth, they were stepping into a lesson they would never forget. The hard lesson that fighting humans is never easy. At that moment, in the silence of their pride, the aliens had already made their first mistake. They believed the battle was already won before it even began. What they did not realize was that underestimating humanity would be the beginning of their greatest regret. The alien fleet entered Earth's orbit with confidence. Their sleek ships glowed in the night sky, moving silently above the planet. To people below, at first, it looked like strange new stars, brighter and closer than usual. But as the formations grew larger and their shadows crossed the ground, it became clear that these were not stars at all. Something from beyond Earth had finally arrived. Panic spread quickly across the world. News channels interrupted programs with shaky footage of glowing objects in the sky. Families stood outside their homes, pointing upward in disbelief. Some felt fear, some felt excitement, but all felt the same question rise in their minds. What is happening to us? World leaders tried to stay calm, but inside their command rooms, there was chaos. Radars were filled with signals of ships too large and too fast to be anything human. Communication networks buzzed with confusion as military forces scrambled to understand what they were facing. The aliens, however, believed this was the exact reaction they wanted. To them, the fear of humanity meant victory was already close. The first message from the aliens was not a greeting. It was a warning. A voice, translated into human languages, echoed across radio waves and screens. It declared Earth now belonged to their empire. It ordered humans to surrender all control, to lay down weapons, and to accept their new rulers. The aliens promised mercy to those who obeyed and destruction to those who resisted. For a moment, silence hung heavy. The world waited for someone to answer. And then, something unexpected happened. Instead of surrender, humanity responded with resistance. Military bases went on high alert. Pilots rushed into cockpits. Soldiers prepared defenses. And ordinary people, even without weapons, refused to accept the idea of giving up their world so easily. The aliens were shocked. Their commanders had predicted humans would fall to their knees in fear. But instead, humans shouted in anger, shared determination, and prepared to fight back. It was the first crack in the aliens' belief of an easy victory. The first clash began not in the skies, but on the seas. Alien ships hovered above oceans, releasing smaller crafts to test Earth's defenses. They targeted naval fleets, expecting to wipe them out quickly. Energy blasts lit up the water, sending waves crashing. Yet, instead of retreating, Earth's ships returned fire with everything they had. Missiles flew upward, striking alien crafts with surprising accuracy. Some ships fell into the ocean, destroyed not by advanced alien weapons, but by the stubborn firepower of humanity. The aliens, though surprised, dismissed it as luck. They believed humans could not keep this up for long, but the clash continued, spreading to the skies above cities. Fighter jets, smaller and weaker compared to alien ships, flew with daring skill. Pilots used clever maneuvers, weaving through clouds and buildings, forcing alien crafts to chase them into difficult paths. In one city, a squadron of jets managed to lure alien fighters into a trap, guiding them directly into anti-air missile range. Several alien ships exploded in bright flashes, crashing down in defeat. This was not what the aliens had expected. They had assumed human weapons would be too primitive, too weak. Yet here they were, losing ships to enemies they had mocked. The commanders grew frustrated. To them, it was supposed to be a simple display of power, not a real battle. But Earth was not playing by their script. On the ground, the story was the same. Alien troops landed in a small region, prepared to show dominance. But instead of quick surrender, they were met with resistance that was both fierce and creative. Humans used terrain to their advantage, setting traps in forests, confusing the invaders in narrow streets, and striking unexpectedly. Even without advanced technology, they made every move count. The aliens began to realize something they had ignored from the start. Humans were unpredictable. Unlike other species they had conquered, humans did not fight in one uniform way. They adapted quickly, changing tactics faster than the aliens could calculate. Where one strategy failed, humans invented another. Their flexibility made them dangerous. The first clash lasted longer than the aliens ever imagined. Hours turned into days, and what was supposed to be an easy display of power turned into a real war. The aliens lost more ships than planned. Their troops on the ground faced more resistance than their reports had predicted, and with every passing day, humanity's courage only grew stronger. In cities across the planet, people came together in unity. Neighbors helped each other. Strangers worked side by side. Where before there had been division, now there was solidarity. The aliens had expected to exploit humanity's weaknesses, but instead they had awoken its greatest strength, unity, in the face of danger. One alien commander, frustrated by the losses, demanded to know why this was happening. His officers explained that humans did not fight with pure logic. They fought with emotion, anger, hope, love for their families, and determination to survive. These were forces the aliens could not measure with numbers or machines. To them, it was chaos. To humans, it was life itself. The clash reached a turning point when one of the largest alien ships was struck by a coordinated human attack. Missiles from the ground, jets from the sky, and even improvised weapons from naval forces all hit the ship at the same time. The massive vessel, which the aliens had believed to be indestructible, began to break apart. The explosion lit up the night, and the sight of it gave humanity hope like never before. For the first time, the aliens felt something unusual among their ranks: fear. Not fear of human weapons, but fear of what they could not understand. How could a species so divided, so weak, fight with such strength? How could creatures without advanced technology turn the tide of battle through pure willpower? The first clash ended not with total victory for either side, but with a clear message: Earth would not fall easily. Humanity had proven it was not a simple target. The aliens had underestimated them, and now they were paying the price. As the dust settled after those first battles, the aliens gathered again to plan their next move. Their pride had been wounded, but their arrogance was still alive. They told themselves this was only a delay, not a defeat. Yet deep inside, some of them began to realize the truth. The war they thought would be easy had only just begun. And humans, far from being helpless, had shown themselves to be far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The first clash had taught both sides something new. The aliens learned that humans could not be crushed with fear alone. And humans learned that even against a powerful enemy, their spirit could burn brighter than any weapon. And so, the story of resistance continued, with Earth standing strong, ready for whatever came next. The first clashes had shaken both sides. The aliens, who had come to Earth with arrogance, now faced a truth they had not expected. Humans were not simple. They were not weak, and they were not ready to give up. But even then, the aliens still believed they had the upper hand. Their weapons were stronger, their ships were faster, and their numbers seemed endless. To them, it was only a matter of time before Earth's spirit was broken. What they didn't know was that humans carried something they could not see, something that had always been their greatest advantage. It was not technology. It was not firepower. It was something hidden deep in their nature, something no scanner or calculation could detect. The unseen advantage. It began with the way humans thought. Aliens had systems, rules, and strict methods for battle. Every movement was calculated, every strike based on patterns. This worked well against other species they had conquered. But humans were different. They did not always follow logic. They fought with instinct, with creativity, with ideas born out of desperation. What looked like disorder to the aliens was, in truth, the very thing that made humans so hard to defeat. During the first battles, the aliens had noted strange behavior. A damaged fighter jet, instead of retreating, dove straight into an alien craft, sacrificing itself to bring the enemy down. Soldiers without proper weapons used tools, fire, even simple rocks to create traps. Groups of people who had never trained as soldiers formed resistance teams and fought with surprising coordination. To the aliens, this seemed reckless. But slowly they began to realize that this recklessness was not weakness, it was unpredictability. And unpredictability was dangerous. The unseen advantage was also in the way humans endured. When food was scarce, they shared. When cities were attacked, survivors rebuilt shelters in the ruins. When fear struck, they held hands and reminded each other of hope. The aliens had assumed that destroying a few major cities would break humanity's will. Instead, the destruction only made humans stronger, binding them together in ways the aliens could not understand. In one region, when alien troops tried to advance, they found themselves confused by empty towns. Streets were abandoned, houses silent. Believing it was victory, the aliens moved forward, only to discover they had walked into carefully laid ambushes. Resistance fighters, hidden in shadows and underground tunnels, struck with perfect timing. Explosions erupted from places the aliens thought were harmless. It was not advanced weapons that made it possible, but clever planning and human knowledge of their own land. The aliens began to see something that unsettled them deeply. Humans adapted too quickly. Every time the aliens adjusted their strategy, humans found a new way to counter it. It was like fighting an enemy that never stopped learning, never stopped changing. But the unseen advantage was not only on the battlefield, it was in the way humans communicated. Unlike the aliens, who followed strict command chains, humans could send ideas across the world in seconds. Through hidden radios, coded signals, and even simple word of mouth, plans spread like wildfire. A trick learned in one town was used in another before the aliens could react. A weakness discovered in one battle became a weapon in the next. The entire planet had become a living network of resistance. One moment in particular showed the power of this advantage. A group of engineers trapped in a city under alien control managed to hack into a small part of the invaders' communication system. With basic tools and sheer determination, They found a way to confuse alien scanners, creating false signals that made human positions seem invisible. The aliens wasted hours chasing ghosts, while real human forces slipped through their defenses. It wasn't advanced alien technology that made this possible. It was human creativity, born from pressure and necessity. The aliens, watching these events unfold, struggled to understand. They had studied humans before arriving. They knew their weapons, their cities, even their history of wars. But they had overlooked the one thing that could not be measured: the human heart, the drive to survive, the stubborn refusal to bow down, no matter the cost. And then came another realization. Humans had an emotional bond with their world. To the aliens, Earth was just a prize, a planet rich with resources, valuable for its position in space. But to humans, it was home. Every mountain, every river, every ruined city carried meaning. They were not just fighting to survive, they were fighting for the soul of their world. This gave them a strength the aliens had never faced before. Even the smallest victories became symbols. When a group of farmers managed to capture an alien drone using nothing but nets and ropes, it inspired thousands. When a family refused to abandon their village and instead turned it into a stronghold, others followed their example. The aliens saw only small events, but to humanity, these moments were proof that they could fight back, that they could win. The unseen advantage grew stronger with each passing day. The aliens, with all their weapons and power, began to feel something unfamiliar: doubt. Their commanders argued over strategies. Some demanded harsher attacks, while others warned that more destruction only seemed to unite humans further. For the first time, the invaders faced not just resistance, but the possibility of failure. One alien officer, studying the endless reports of human defiance, made a chilling observation. They do not fight like others we have conquered. They fight as if every single one of them is a commander. They fight as if losing is not an option. His words spread among his ranks, planting unease in even the proudest warriors. But for humans, this unseen advantage was not something they planned. It was simply who they were. Their creativity, their unity, their stubbornness, and their love for each other had always been part of them. The aliens had overlooked it, and now they were paying the price. As the battles continued, Earth remained scarred but unbroken. Cities burned, skies thundered with ships, yet humanity's spirit only grew stronger. They had discovered something vital. Even when outmatched in technology, they had a weapon more powerful than anything the aliens carried. The unseen advantage was not a machine. It was not a strategy written in books. It was a force that lived inside every human heart: the will to fight for freedom, the courage to protect one another, and the creativity to find hope in the darkest times. And though the war was far from over, this advantage would become the turning point. The aliens had underestimated it once. They would not make that mistake again. But by the time they truly understood it, it might already be too late. The humans had shown their unseen advantage. And it was something no empire in the stars could ever take away. The war had stretched longer than anyone had expected. The aliens thought Earth would fall in days, maybe weeks. Instead, months had gone by, and though the skies were filled with their ships and the ground shook with their weapons, humanity was still standing. The aliens still had power, still had numbers, but something had shifted. Quietly, slowly, almost invisibly at first. The balance was beginning to change. The turning point was not a single battle. It was not a grand victory written in one night. It was the gathering of small sparks that turned into a fire too strong to be put out. And it all began with the human spirit reaching a level even the aliens could no longer ignore. The invaders had grown frustrated. Their commanders, who once spoke with confidence, now argued over strategies. One side pushed for harsher destruction, hoping to crush the will of humanity once and for all. The other warned that every act of cruelty only seemed to make humans fight harder. The more cities they leveled, the more villages rose to resist. The more lives they tried to break, the stronger the survivors became. For humanity, this frustration was the first sign that things were shifting. The aliens were no longer untouchable. They bled, they faltered, and they made mistakes. And when an enemy starts making mistakes, that is when opportunities are born. The turning point came first in the form of knowledge. Humans began to understand their enemy better. At the start, the invaders had seemed unstoppable, machines, ships, and weapons beyond imagination. But as battles continued, humans discovered weaknesses. The alien armor, while strong, overheated if struck too many times in the same spot. Their communication systems, though advanced, could be scrambled with clever signals. Even their soldiers, who looked terrifying at first, showed hesitation when forced into close, chaotic combat. These discoveries spread quickly. One small group of fighters would test a tactic, and soon, across mountains and oceans, others were trying the same method. Radios whispered instructions. Coded messages carried secrets, and within weeks, humans across the planet were fighting smarter, sharper, and harder. And then, there were the victories. Small ones at first, but powerful enough to shift morale. A convoy of alien supplies was destroyed by villagers using little more than fire and stolen explosives. A hidden human base managed to bring down an alien warship by luring it into a canyon and collapsing the cliffs around it. In one city, humans captured alien technology and turned their own weapons back against them. These moments spread like wildfire. For the aliens, they were nothing more than inconveniences. But for humans, they were proof that the war could be won. Each victory, no matter how small, was a reminder. The invaders were not gods. They were not unbeatable. They were just another enemy. The turning point grew sharper when humans started to unite in ways no one had thought possible. Before the invasion, nations had often been divided, arguing, competing, sometimes even fighting each other. But now, under the shadow of a common enemy, those divisions began to fade. Former rivals shared information, former enemies fought side by side, and ordinary people across the world joined forces as if they had been waiting for this moment all along. The aliens had not expected this. They had studied human history and believed division was their weakness. But instead, the invasion had turned division into unity, and unity made humanity stronger than ever. The invaders soon realized they were fighting not just an army, but an entire species. Farmers, teachers, mechanics, engineers, even children, every single human became part of the struggle in some way. A simple mechanic who repaired vehicles kept resistance forces moving. A group of children who learned to carry coded messages kept communication alive. Every person mattered, and that made humanity's force endless. The real turning point came when humans stopped thinking of themselves as survivors and began thinking of themselves as fighters. They no longer asked, "How long can we last?" but instead, "How can we win?" This change in mindset spread everywhere. In the ruins of cities, people drew symbols of resistance on walls. In the mountains, voices sang songs of defiance around fires. Even in the darkest prisons, whispers of escape plans gave prisoners strength. The aliens felt the shift too. Their patrols became more cautious. Their soldiers hesitated more often. Their commanders ordered retreats more frequently. It was as if the invaders themselves had begun to sense that the tide was turning. One night, in the silence of a ruined countryside, a group of human fighters ambushed an alien outpost. They fought with everything they had: stones, stolen rifles, fire, and sheer willpower. Against all odds, they captured the outpost and held it long enough to send a signal across the planet. That signal carried a simple message: They can be defeated. That message changed everything. It was no longer about surviving an invasion. It was about victory. The turning point was not only in battlefields, but also in the hearts of people. Fear began to fade, replaced by courage. The same families that once hid underground now stood ready to fight. The same towns that had been crushed rebuilt themselves with defiance. The same soldiers who once doubted their chances now looked at the enemy with fire in their eyes. The aliens had underestimated humanity's hidden strength, but now they were beginning to see it fully. Humanity was not fighting alone. They were fighting together. And together, they were far more dangerous than the invaders had imagined. As days passed, the world that once seemed broken now began to glow with determination. Fires of resistance burned everywhere. Human strategies grew sharper, attacks became bolder, and victories became more frequent. It was still a long road ahead. The aliens were not gone, and the war was not over. But something had changed forever. Humanity was no longer fighting from the shadows. They were stepping into the light, turning despair into hope and weakness into strength. The turning point had arrived. And with it came a new truth, one that echoed across the planet. Humanity would not only survive, they would win. The invaders, who once looked down on humans as weak, now looked at them with something they had never felt before: fear. And that fear was the first sign of their coming defeat. The war was not finished, but the path was clear. Humanity had turned the tide. The impossible no longer felt impossible. The future, once dark and uncertain, now carried a new promise. The turning point had come, and it belonged to humanity. The war that began with arrogance and overconfidence finally reached a point of truth. The aliens had come believing humanity would be an easy opponent, but the reality was far different. What they thought would take weeks had turned into months, and what they expected to be a simple conquest had turned into a painful struggle. In the end, the greatest lesson was not learned by humans, but by the invaders themselves. At first, the aliens had believed in their superiority. Their weapons were stronger, their technology was older and more advanced, and their armies were trained for war. To them, humans were only a primitive species, chaotic, divided, and fragile. But after the long battles, after countless losses, on both sides they began to see what their calculations had missed. Humanity's true strength had never been in weapons or machines. It was in spirit, in the ability to adapt, and in the will to stand no matter how many times they were pushed down. When the turning point had passed, human victories grew faster. Small resistance groups became organized armies. Scattered survivors became united fighters. They began to reclaim land, push back patrols, and even take over alien strongholds. Each victory was a stone in a growing wall, a proof that the invaders could be defeated. And with each success, the invaders lost not only ground, but also confidence. The lesson became clear to the aliens when they faced humans who had nothing left to lose. Entire towns, burned and destroyed, gave birth to fighters who would rather die than surrender. Families who had lost everything still found the strength to fight on. Even children, who had grown up under the shadow of alien ships, carried messages, tended to the wounded, and whispered stories of courage that kept hope alive. This kind of strength was not written in the invaders' calculations. It was not in their data or strategies. It came from something they did not understand: human determination. For humans, the lesson was different. At the beginning, many believed the war was hopeless. They had seen the sky darken with alien ships and thought it was the end. But as time went on, they learned that fear could be turned into courage, despair into unity. They discovered that no matter how advanced the enemy was, clever thinking and unbreakable will could even the fight. In villages and cities, in mountains and deserts, people told each other one truth: we can fight. We can win. This truth became the heartbeat of humanity. And as the heartbeat grew stronger, it echoed across the world. For the aliens, the war had become more costly than they could afford. Every battle drained resources, every loss damaged morale. Their leaders, who once spoke of quick victory, now whispered doubts. They realized that the longer they stayed, the more dangerous humanity became. What they thought would be prey had turned into predators. What they thought would be weak had become unbreakable. The lesson was clear. Never underestimate those who fight for their home. The aliens had weapons that could level mountains, but humans had something deeper. They had love for their families, for their land, for their freedom. And that love created courage too strong to be broken. The invaders learned that no amount of technology could crush a heart that refuses to surrender. Some alien commanders argued to continue the war, but others saw the truth. They saw that humanity was learning faster than the invaders could adapt. They saw that humans were using alien technology against them. They saw that the cost of war was no longer worth the gain. And so, slowly, the invaders began to withdraw. Not in triumph, but in silence. Their ships that once filled the skies now left the atmosphere one by one. Their soldiers who once marched through cities now vanished into shadows. Humanity had not only survived, they had forced the invaders to retreat. For humans, victory was not just about survival. It was about discovery. They discovered that when united, they were unstoppable. They discovered that strength did not come from weapons alone, but from courage, cleverness, and the will to fight for what was right. They discovered that even when facing the unknown, they could adapt, learn, and rise above. When the war ended, the world was scarred. Cities lay in ruins, fields were burned, and countless lives had been lost. But among the ruins, hope stood stronger than ever. People began to rebuild brick by brick, hand by hand. They remembered the sacrifices, the courage, and the unity that saved them. The lesson humans carried was this: never again doubt their own strength. They had faced something far beyond them and had not only survived, but triumphed. From then on, they understood that no matter what came, whether from Earth or from the stars, they would be ready. The aliens, too, carried their own lesson. They left with a warning written into their history. Do not mistake humanity's kindness for weakness. Do not mistake their divisions for fragility. And never, ever believe that fighting them will be easy. For a long time, silence filled the skies. The invaders did not return. Perhaps they feared another war, or perhaps they had simply learned enough. Whatever the reason, they left humanity stronger than before. In the years that followed, people spoke of the invasion not only as a time of suffering, but also as a time of awakening. Humanity had been tested, and they had proven themselves. They were no longer just survivors of Earth. They were defenders of it. And that identity carried into every generation that followed. Children who grew up after the war listened to stories of bravery and sacrifice. They learned about the night when resistance fighters captured an alien outpost, about the villagers who burned a convoy, about the families who fought with nothing but courage. These stories became lessons themselves, reminders that humanity's strength did not come from machines, but from within. The greatest lesson of all was not written in history books, but carved into the hearts of everyone who lived through it. That hope, once lit, can never be extinguished. The aliens had thought fighting humans would be easy. They had thought Earth would fall like so many other worlds, but in the end, they walked away with the hardest lesson of all. That humanity, no matter the odds, could never be broken. The war had ended, but the lesson remained, and it was a lesson no enemy would ever forget.